So we are back at it with another Division 2 video, and I know a lot of you guys really enjoyed the builds that come to this channel, and especially with 12.1 being out for a while now, you guys like to see different builds, and it's gotten to a point where it is a little tough to really reinvent the wheel, but we do try to bring builds that maybe we've used way in the past, and now we can use them again. And this is one of those builds. I want to say this build in a couple patches ago, it was one of the most used builds. It was amazing not only for PvE but also PvP, and now it got nerfed a few times. You hardly ever see it too often in PvP, and you hardly ever see it too often in PvE, but it's still really effective, I can say, in PvE, and I still have fun with it. And not only is it great in solo, but it's also great in group play, because the amplified damage, the reduced damage you do to the target that you're firing at, works for all your teammates. So if you mark that enemy, your teammates are going to get that amplified damage, and we'll break down the whole build for you. But before we do, guys, if you guys can leave a thumbs up on the video, it would definitely help the video out, help the channel out. So I appreciate you guys for taking the time to just leaving a thumbs up. And as you guys seen in this gameplay, I did want to show you guys a little bit of gameplay of this build. It does what it needs to do, right? It really destroys these enemies. Once you start getting that full flag, it really is a game changer. And the explosion damage that it does to other enemies around it is pretty impressive. And not only that, the amount of damage you're doing. This is on heroic. It looks like we're not having any issues taking out these enemies. And that's what I wanted. I wanted a build that would still be affected in 12.1, that would have enough damage, have some survivability. I'm not going to say you're tank proof with this build, but you do have some survivability, and if you play the build right, it shouldn't be too hard at all. So that's enough talking. Are you guys ready? I think you guys are. Let's dive into the build. So for the build, we are running the Technician class. This is going to allow us to use a laser pointer that you get with the Technician class to really free up one other skill because of the chest piece talent. And I'll show you the build in a second, but you do want to go with the Technician class for this build, because if not, you won't be able to attach that laser pointer. And I'll show you the weapon I'm using right now. For the weapon, we are using the FAL. Yes, this bad boy is a monster. 109,000 damage, 650 RPM with 52 round mag. Yes, you could say 52 rounds in the FAL. That's kind of crazy, but that's because of the build that we have set up here. It allows us to extend that mag, which allows us to put out more damage. And I think it's the perfect amount of rounds you need in your mag to really drop enemies with this build. We have assault rifle damage, health damage, and damage to targets out of cover. I was really lucky. Really god roll piece right here. Then look, we have Instinct. Hitting enemies grants 15% skill damage for 5 seconds. Now using a skill or damaging enemies with a skill grants 15% weapon damage, but it doubles. So that's why we're gaining additional 30% weapon damage and 30% skill damage as long both is happening at the same time. So you can see how I'm able to add a lot of damage on this build with still having 1.3 million armor. Now, the one thing I did tell you guys is you guys want to make sure that you have the Technician class, because it has the linked laser pointer, and look what it does. Technician laser pointer that pulses targets at which it's aimed, underbarrel attachment for long rails. So you can only use this on long rail underbarrel weapons, but what you can do is not have to use a pulse, and you can pair this up with the chest piece talent you'll see in just a second. Now we do have critical hit chance on the scope, 20 round mag on the magazine, and then we do have 5% critical hit chance on the muzzle. So for the mask, we are running the True Patriot 4-piece. If you look at this, the 2-piece lets us carry more ammo capacity, but look what the 3-piece does, 30% magazine size, and that's why we're able to have more rounds on our FAL. Now, why is this build still pretty effective and you guys saw it works really well? Well, because of the red, white, and blue 4th piece talent. Every 2 seconds, enemies you shoot receive a stacking debuff of red, white, and blue. Red amplifies the enemy's damage by 8%. White, shooting an enemy repairs that attacking agent's armor by 2% every second. And then blue decreases the enemy's damage dealt by 8%. So it's pretty good right there, right? You take less damage, you kind of heal yourself, and you put out more damage. Now the full flag, listen to this. Enemies that die while under the effect, all 3 debuffs create a 5-meter explosion, dealing damage equal to their total health. Explosive damage reduces all named enemies. So if you kill an enemy that's a full stack, he can do explosive damage to the enemy next to him, and a lot of times it takes a big chunk of their armor off. So let's look at this. We have armor on here, critical hit damage, and a critical hit damage mod. For the chest, we went with the Fenrir's chest. That's going to give us that 10% assault rifle damage. We have weapon damage on here, critical hit chance, critical hit damage, and then critical hit damage mod. And then look at the talent on the chest. Spotter amplifies total weapon damage and skill damage by 15% to pulse enemies. As long as I have that link laser pointer on, we're going to be able to get additional amplified damage of 15% for our skills and our weapon. For the holster, we have our second piece of True Patriot, and we have weapon damage, critical hit damage. For our third piece of True Patriot, we have all the knee pads. On this one, we decided to go with armor and then critical hit damage. For the gloves, the fourth and final piece of True Patriot, and that's going to be armor and critical hit damage. And then for the backpack, we have the Cheska backpack that gives us 10% critical hit chance, which we needed because we are using an AR. We want to get some kind of critical chance on this build, so we hit those crits a lot more often. We have weapon damage, crit chance, and the crit damage mod. And I decided to change up the talent. You don't really see this too often. Unstoppable Force. Killing an enemy increases total weapon damage by 5% for 15 seconds. So that means we can have up to 25% extra weapon damage as long as we just continue to get those kills, right? And then it keeps refreshing. So that's a lot of damage right there because that weapon damage is then amplified by our amplified damage, which is why we're able to hit pretty good with this build and still have 1.3 million armor on an AR. And then we check out the stats. You can see we have 41% crit chance, 150% crit hit damage, well, 148%, just rounded up, 75% headshot damage, 21% health damage, and then remember we do have damage to targets out of cover from the AR itself. So a lot of damage right there. And then head over here for our armor at 1.2 million, almost 1.3 million armor. And if you check out the skills, we were just running a Crusader shield, and then I was pairing that up with a striker drone. You can run any skill you want, but obviously if we want to keep InSync active, having a drone or a turret really helps out. Obviously you can always proc InSync when you pull out the shield initially because you're deploying a skill, right? But that's only for a short time, so it's for that short period. You definitely want a skill that's going to continue to put out damage. So the striker drone or the regular assault turret are going to be your best bets right there. But yeah, that's the build right there, guys. That's it. One of the funnest builds to run, and this also works with your teammates. So if you work with your teammate and you have one person debuffing the enemies and then buffing the enemies, so that way your teammates are getting more damage, it really helps out. So it's a great support player build. You can also run it solo, as you guys saw here, but definitely one of my favorites still to this day, even after the multiple nerfs that they did to it. But we're gonna wrap it up here, guys. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this, but I will see you guys in the next one. But until then, nothing but skills is out.